Hi everyone on multiple platforms. We're expanding now. Today we're on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook, and we are here to promote our idea of a Helix of success. Rolf and I love conversations together. We are throwing ideas at each other and exploring them together, creating synergies and new ideas from that about coaching, mentoring, leadership, and other topics that are relatable and important for many of you. So today we're going to talk about coaching-led leadership. And just to explain a bit, I'm picking the topics out of almost 100 now in our group in a random way. So any given week, we don't know the topic or we don't put the priority on them. We just decide, okay, or the random service of Google decides for us what we're going to talk about, and then we just roll with that. Hi, Roloff.
Hi there. Good afternoon to you there from
it's still before 12 actually.
Oh, there. Good morning to you. I'm sorry. My international awareness needs to be improved, and that's it.
Yeah.
We're
no worries.
Beautiful day here. Beautiful day in Iceland. So I think it's a good day to have a little conversation, perhaps around coaching. And
it's always a good conversation to talk with you. So, do you want to give an intro to us what a coaching-led leadership is and what is it about?
Yeah, and maybe what it's not about also. So I don't have it. And so there are a number of aspects around coaching-led leadership, and some things that you don't do. And I think everybody knows that. You try not to be directive. You try not to say do this, do that. You try to give people space. And I think to start off from the negative, I think the best demonstration of non-coaching based leadership are the eternal yearly reviews that employees get, which are probably about the worst thing that you can have in an organization, where you typically will be scored. You get ranked, and on the basis of the ranking, you will get whatever 1%, 2%, 5% of your salary will be based on that, and then which is based on an entire year's worth of your efforts combined into one single number, which says absolutely nothing. And then from there, it only goes downhill. So what you see is then that your weak points, so your improvement points. So this is where, you're put into the frame where, you're not perfect, and you have to come up with 2 weak points, 3 weak points, and put criteria, how are you going to improve on that? So really the framing there is that you really, you're not as performing as well as you could, and what you need to focus on is your weak points. Of course, the interesting point is that in any other activity, what you tend to try to focus on are your strong points, because that's where you differentiate, and it's your strong points what you want to get stronger, because then you'll be able to differentiate. You will be able to have more impact. You'll be able to do more than what you did. So the whole model is completely flawed, and so that's an example of non-coaching. And so let's look at examples of coaching. The first thing about coaching, it's very time linked. So you will never wait until, so you say, okay, let me write down this person's failure, and we will discuss that at the end of the year. So you're going to wait 3 months, 6 months, what have you, to discuss whatever it is there. Now that is genuinely complete stupidity, and it is really, really amazing that many corporates, follow this completely insane approach, because really what we want to do is, as soon as somebody is doing something that you don't think makes sense, is you want to immediately intervene and have that discussion.
Have you seen the companies, or have you worked with the companies who actually follow it that way, that it's only one conversation in a year and the employees don't get constructive feedback at all in between?
Yes, I have. Mm-hmm. I mean, at least in a formal sense, certainly I've got many companies where that's formally the case. If you have a good leader, a good boss, they will do that, and many will do that. But I mean, from a formal looking from HR, there will be just this formal meeting once a year where you get down and your salary has been determined or improvement. And yes, I've gone through many of those sessions myself, and I found them stupid to begin with, and that only increased with time. Completely senseless activity in that sense. So yes, many did it, and many still do it. And as I said,
I asked because I like in my in one of the companies where I worked, you did have an annual review that was related to the salary conversation, but then like I never had problems with having the conversation, so I never experienced that my manager would wait for having to have the conversation until those reviews. That was just kind of the summary of all the conversations in between. So I'm really surprised to hear, like, it sounds like I've been lucky with my experience and my employers before.
Yeah. Now, best case, what happens is that both you and your report or that would consider this to be a stupid exercise. So, okay, look, let's get this out of the way, and then we can have a genuine conversation. So there would be a lot of false reality going on. So that often would be the case. That you said, yeah, and I have to do this. I have to fill this in. I have to go. I have to grade somebody with a level 1, and every time I grade somebody with a level 1, it means I have to grade somebody else with level 3. It's even worse. So you're tying your performance, not whether you did it well or not, which is really what it's about, but whether did you do it better than somebody else, or are you better than somebody else, which again is a completely idiotic way of working. And it surprises me that could still exist, but it still does.
Okay. Let's hope that everyone watching is not in those companies, and if yes, then let's offer what we could actually, what we see as a better solution or a better practice in organizations.
Well, let's talk about that, because as a matter of fact, there is because we're looking to give some practical advice here. So there really is a way to have a conversation, and it shouldn't happen just once a year. And actually, there are a number of methods, and I'll describe one, which really consists of about 6 questions, and you do them in a certain order. And the first one you ask is where are we going? Where are we going as a group? In other words, do we have a consensus about where we want to go, what our vision is? And you will pick up then in that statement, do the people understand, or have you communicated your vision, the vision of the group, properly to the people you employ? So that's your first step. So you're trying to establish commonality. And notice it's about we. So you're not starting with the other person. You're not judging the other person. It's really a common judgment about how are we doing, where are we going? So the next question you would ask is where are you going? So where do you think that you fit into this framework that we have? Do you think you fit in well? Do you are you struggling? Do you disagree? And so on and so forth. So that's your second step, trying to establish how you fit, the person you're now interviewing and so on. Do they feel they fit, and how do they fit into that common framework? After that, then you can ask. So you can ask them, well, what do you think you're doing well? What are you happy about? What are you proud about? So again, here you're focusing really on the strong points of that person, which is really what it is, what you're doing, because what they're doing well is presumably what they're contributing the most value with. That would be the expectation. And then you can ask if they, not you yourself, but do they have suggestions for improvements? And again, here it's not about saying you have 2 weak points. No, just suggestions for improvement. And that could be that they say, well, this could be some weak points that I find is detracting from my performance. Or they might say, look, I think I'm pretty good at this, but I'd like to take an additional course to strengthen that and to improve my strong points. So again, they determine where the areas of improvement should be. Then your contribution then is you ask, well, how can I help? What can I do to help you create that? And finally, the last question you can ask is, what suggestions do you have for me so that I can help you better? I can be a better manager, that I can in fact help and support you more. So that is the way you could go through a conversation like this in a coaching model. And we have
So
to
have you practiced that with like, or have you seen that in practice, the conversation going that way? Because I want to discuss the pitfalls. What do you see usually are the challenging parts of those conversations, and how people can actually get over those challenges?
Yeah, in fact, my very first job, I had a really, really good boss. I didn't know that at the time, but I remember he would walk in, and he would come in, and he would say, have a cup of coffee, and he would just walk in and say, "Well, is there any way I can help you?" And I thought, that's great. You don't see that. People just walk in and say, "Any way they can help." And only much later did I realize that he was giving me coaching sessions. So in fact, he was intervening. But the way he would do that, he would say, "Well, look, how can I help you?" And in fact, I took that over. So that's what I say for maybe 30 years. I'll say, I'll walk in and say, "How can I help you?" And half of them don't even know that I'm actually doing an intervention. But definitely, so I actually, because I was very lucky to have a boss who understood that I was able to copy his behavior.
Would you? Now, how would you reply to people if they say, "Oh, this is a manipulation"? Like you're coming and you want them to get something done, and you just offering your help. That, what I mean? The reaction.
Yeah. Well, you say you want them to get something done. No. I mean, there are agreements probably about what needs to be done. So I'm assuming that that's not a discussion there. That point is, what you want to do is help them do it better. That's and that's the goal that you have to say, look, these are your goals, I would assume. And it is a discussion about the goals, but again, that's part of the discussion. What we said, what's the shared vision? What do you think we're doing as a group? And if there's a conflict in that, presumably that would come out in that first question. So you assume you have alignment, and that's when the point where you get to say, look, other ways we can improve that. Yeah, is that manipulation? You probably have to define what you mean with manipulation. Manipulation tends to mean you're doing something without the other person knowing. Well, no, I think you're quite up front about this. You could walk through these 6 questions, say, these are the reasons I'm asking you these questions, because this is what the intention is. So in that sense, I don't think it's it certainly is influencing, but I don't think I'd call it manipulation.
I asked this question because, as you said, half of people would never even understand that you're making an intervention at that moment. And that could be interpreted as you are coming into the room with this question and you actually have a hidden agenda. That's why I wanted you to clarify this way. And I think you did it quite well, Rolo.
It's a non-expressed agenda. It's not hidden, but because you don't always have to be explicit about what you do. There's a difference between there. Yeah.
Great. So what kind of reactions have you seen in your experience when you've asked the question? You came in and asked, how can I support you? And how could we categorize the replies and help the leaders who are watching us right now know which way to continue the conversation?
I've never had a negative reaction to a statement like that. Especially if you're listening and taking the time. And you're asking, do you need help? Of course, if they say no, or you say I can help you, it's a friendly question, and you're honest about it. I don't think people will feel either pressured or offended or the feeling that that they're being downgraded. That's part of how you approach it, I would suppose. That has to be in the behavior that you have. You would also, of course, if I have established a relationship with someone like this, it's not the first time you're doing it. When you're coaching, you're at the coffee machine. You can make a statement, you can ask a question. So, generally speaking, this kind of behavior, they would recognize that. So it's not something you're doing for the first time. So who's surprised what's happening here, they would recognize this as just being an extension of how you always are, I would think.
Great. And I want to build a bit up on that. As you said, it is building relationship, right? It's not like one time occasion that you do this conversation, you have this conversation with your team members, and then that's it. You've done your coaching part of the work as a leader. It's really about building the relationship that way, and having these coaching elements in every conversation that you're having with the team.
Yeah, that's true. And again, to what it's interesting, because you will see people do this, but you'll also see that people, and that's important also, will do, I would say, almost the opposite. So you actually, it's useful to recognize when you actually see, what's the word, anti-leadership behavior. So people who actually who are not only not being leaders, they are being non-leaders, and to recognize that. And there's a number of criteria, a number of things that you can recognize when you're talking to somebody, when you can see that they are not performing in a leadership role. So one of them is probably if you find that someone is often focusing on their own experience and expressing, their thoughts, and actually making themselves the focus of attention. That's obvious, because what you're doing in a conversation when you're being a coach is you're trying to make the person you're speaking with to be the focus of attention. And you'll also notice that somebody who doesn't ask many questions, about what other people are experiencing or thoughts. I mean, you're very good at that. You will continually ask questions about how do you experience this, what do you think of that. You will find that somebody who has a weak leadership profile won't do that much. They may ask one question, and you may not even get halfway through your first sentence, but they jump in and start expressing whatever they want to express.
I actually want to make a tiny, give tiny couple of cents here. Those people can ask quite a lot of questions. Quite often, they start their couple-minute long monologue with a question, and then they'll give you space to answer it, and they directly go into their answer to that question. Or they say, but don't you think? And that is also not a great question to open up a conversation and really hear what the person thinks, because that way you're already giving them your opinion. And especially if you're in a leadership position and you're asking your employee, but don't you think, that already says, like, I'm the leader, I know, like, this is my opinion, and whatever you say will just play against you anyways.
Yeah, very good.
So it's not about the number of questions, it's about what kind of questions those are.
A lot of people recognize that they're formally required to ask for feedback, so they'll do exactly that. So what do you think? And then, so you give them the second or the space, but they will not continue to once you give an answer, that they'll, think through it with you, or what do you mean with this? And, what's the effect of this? They basically dump it. So they say, you give your answer, and then exactly what you say. Well, don't you think? And then they come back with their answer. So you're right. That's again a sign that that they're not demonstrating good leadership. And another interesting thing about when you see, and this comes to maturity, is that people who have that lack of leadership will often be interested in hearing what others think of them. So they're always, trying to find out, well, what do you think? What do you think of me? How am I doing? So that's actually a kind of a form, I think, of insecurity or immaturity, perhaps, maybe even a better way of it. So they're, not accepting of how they are.
That's a very interesting point, because I could see it working both ways. People with great maturity are asking about the opinions and observations of the other people. I think what is happening there, since they are mature, they don't depend on the opinions. They just take the learning from that. They take the constructive part of the feedback, and they don't take it as a personal offense anyhow. It's just data. It's information that I can actually take or leave it, and I can use it to improve myself. But what you're talking about, if there is lack of maturity, then whatever feedback comes our way is like a personal attack towards us as a human being, not a particular behavior of ours, but really us as a whole. So that's the difference there.
Yeah. So, I mean, the question is perhaps if we'll ask you, what do you think of me, or what do you think of something I did or tried to achieve? That's a major difference. In other words, so I tried to do this. What do you think of that? So that's again divorced from you as a person. It's not about you. It's about whatever results that you're trying to achieve. So you're asking, of course, for feedback on that is very good. Continuous feedback on that. And then, oh yeah, another one that's also useful is that, I mean, this is something you can really look to yourself. Is how happy or unhappy are you with other people's achievements? I mean, in other words, that's also actually a form of perhaps jealousy. If somebody's doing really well, does that make you? I wouldn't. Perhaps unhappy is a strong word, but do you feel restless? Do you feel, oh well, they did that so well, and an interview so well. Maybe I need to improve my interview techniques too. That's so that is a form of actually lack of leadership when you have that aspect also there. And I think that there's this time with coaching, it does, because in order to coach, you have to avoid these kinds of behaviors. Obviously, it can't be about you. It has to be about the other person. That's, of course, the basis of coaching, of a coaching-based leadership. It's really continually putting the focus and finding the techniques to put the focus and the interests of the people around you. It's kind of as simple as that.
Yeah, and the power of those questions is when you are, as a leader, guiding through the conversation with those questions, and you are helping your employee, your team member, explore their answers, their ways of solving the solution, the problem that is in front of them, and so on, you automatically get a so much stronger buy-in into that solution because it came from them. And that's the same with my clients when we work. I can give them a couple of suggestions, but I never say this is the answer to you. Like I could, for example, quite often I use my own experiences as examples. So I tell a story. I use a kind of a storytelling. I describe the situation and my actions, and then we start exploring. Like, okay, what resonates with you? What do you agree with in this situation? How I did it, what not, and so on. Because that way, I'm helping them dig out their way of handling the situation. I'm not saying that my answer, my reply, my handling the situation was the right one. I just give them that as a framework, and then we start copying the pieces of that into the framework that they like, and we maybe puzzle them or shuffle them around. Then we okay, this piece doesn't really fit in your frame. Let's create an alternative one for your frame, and then we just create a new one. So that's the way of how you could do it in the coaching conversation as well as a leader. You don't have to just ask questions if you feel like, okay, a person doesn't feel comfortable, maybe getting all this interrogation going on. There are some other solutions, but it's still about exploring their answers and helping them find their answers, because that is what is internalized per se, by default. And in this internalization, it's so much easier for them to stick with the solution that you come up with together.
Yeah, actually, you mentioned a really nice leadership technique that you're using there, consciously or unconsciously, and that's the storytelling technique. It's called the story of me, the story of us, and the story of now. And I mean, are you familiar with that one? We never discussed it up to now. Then if you
it's a separate post. Maybe we can take it as a next week's post, because we already right over on time. So we can maybe take the story of me next time.
We could talk that one there, because that's what I'm recognizing in your techniques for that. Yeah. So
shall we try to summarize what we have discussed so far today?
If we can, I'll let you try.
All right. We talked about the leadership, how you can be a good leader and how you can be a leader that is not taking the best or getting the best out of your people. And we discussed in that coaching-led leadership is one of the aspects of the leadership that actually helps you bring the best out of your people to the table, to the discussion. And we discussed that it is about asking questions, explorative questions. It's about helping people find their own answers so that they can commit stronger to following those answers. And as Rolf is talking, it's really not about you as a leader, it's about your people. So you are there to serve your people. And by asking questions and helping them find the structure for their thoughts and finding the answers somewhere within the whole mind of your people, you are doing the best job you can for them.
Yeah, and if I can summarize your summary, it's about helping people achieve their goals and not about getting them to achieve your goals. And of course, the basis of that is hopefully is that the goals, your goals and their goals are aligned. And if that's the case, then you can focus fully on helping them achieve their goals. So that's what really coaching is all about.
Great. Thanks a lot, Roloff. It was again a fun conversation as always.
Yeah, same here. Great. Thank you once again. And we'll continue on our journey together, correct?
Yeah. And yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Off-road one. And if anyone is interested in these conversations and the posts that we're referring to, just visit our LinkedIn groups, Helix of Success. Just join it, and let's continue the conversation there.
Okay. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.